Hi there, and welcome to the Anita Chat podcast. I'm your host, Anita Rombo, and this is the podcast for growth-oriented women to have authentic, real talk. Nothing is off the table here, but as an intuitive self-relationship coach, you'll find the content gravitates towards mindset, intentional action, spirituality, and all things wellness. So if you're ready to learn, laugh, show up, and glow up to be the best version of yourself, grab your favorite bevy, settle in, and we've got lots to chat about. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Anita Chat. I hope you are doing well. Today, I am so excited to welcome a guest to the chat, Kelly Hopkins, a happiness coach. I'm super excited to learn more about what that entails. So, Kelly, welcome to the chat.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. Can you start off by just introducing yourself and a little bit more about your story, what led you to become a happiness coach?
Sure, absolutely. So again, my name is Kelly Hopkins, and I was living in Los Angeles and working in social services. I have been working in social services since the time that I was in college. It ended up being a total of 26 years. And I had the great opportunity to love my job, which a lot of people don't. And I worked really hard. I was a director of first an administrative director in a counseling program for 11 years, and then 16 years as the director of community organizing at a large social services agency in Los Angeles. And I was running a countywide program. It had a multi-million-dollar budget. I was supervising about 75 people. The work was going great. I had great friends. I had all the things that I should have had to feel happy. I had a great family, and I didn't feel happy. And it was going on for a long time. In the past, I did traditional therapy, and I felt better for sure, but I still didn't feel happy. And then I adopted 2 children, and it became more imperative to me that I figure this out, because I was like, I want to be a role model for them on how to live your best life, right? And I don't want to be a sad mom, and even though my interactions with them were not sad, when you don't feel good inside, it comes through, not only to your children, but to everyone else. And so at the time that I adopted my daughter, that she was my second child, I had already decided that this was it. I was going to do something significant to really get to know myself better, figure out why even though I had all the trappings of happiness, I didn't feel happy inside. And I felt, for me, the way I think about it is I felt like I was living a half life, there was nothing, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. And I felt like, is this all there is? And I really felt like it wasn't. I felt like there was more. And so that was sort of the very beginning of where I came to the point personally where I was unhappy, and I felt strongly that I wanted to do something to figure myself out and to find, I thought of happiness at that time as a destination. I thought of it as a place that you get to and then nothing bad ever happens. And I learned a lot over the next 8 years about how that isn't true. But that was sort of the genesis of my journey into my own happiness, my own soul, and then becoming a happiness coach.
I love that. And I resonate with that on so many different levels. So both you and I are coaches. You call yourself a happiness coach. I call myself a soul strategist and success coach. And our stories, I feel, are very similar. Like, we lived parallel lives in a sense, except I think you took on some more drastic measures, which we'll get to in a second, to find yourself. But I think both of us come from coaching our clients from a place of knowing that there is more, that this isn't as good as it gets. And external success does not necessarily equate to happiness. It's the inner fulfillment and the quest for inner fulfillment, which is all within us, and really tapping into that innermost alignment and truth. When you feel that you have discovered yourself and you come home to yourself, that's when true success and happiness comes. Because success doesn't bring happiness, but happiness most definitely can bring success, because you're in that energetics, or that vibration of happiness, which attracts all great things to us.
Absolutely.
So having said that, and I too have been in that corporate world where, and I still am to an extent, working really hard and getting all those accolades and achievements. And then, especially as women, you mentioned, you want to put your best foot forward for your family. And it's great. Like on the outside, everything is great. On paper, everything is great. You may have ticked off all the boxes and made it seem like, you achieved the pinnacle of everything you were meant to do. But if you feel empty inside, that really impacts, first of all, your relationship with yourself, but also your relationship with the people that you care about. And we want to empower those young minds, especially, and let them know that, things don't have to be this way. So I really applaud your vision. And I know that it was much more than a vision for you. You actually, like you mentioned, took some pretty significant steps. Can you tell us more about what that looked like?
Sure. And it was radical, I'll start by saying that. So, but it was also very thoughtful. So, I'm a single mom and I adopted 2 children, yeah, on my own. And so there were 2 factors. One was I didn't want them to be in childcare 70 hours a week, while I was working. And I wanted to be I wanted to know myself. I wanted to really understand myself and understand why I was not happy and was there more, right? As you just described, everything you said is exactly how I felt. And so I decided that I would take a work break when after my daughter's adoption was finalized, I would take a work break and I would not work for 5 years and I would focus on my relationship with my children, being a mom because through my social services work, I know that 0 to 5 is the most important time frame in your children's lives. So I would be present with them. I would be present with myself. I would focus on myself. I would see if I could figure out why I wasn't happy and if there was a different path for me. And so even before my daughter's adoption, I started to research how I could go about doing that. How could I take a 5-year work break? I was living in Los Angeles and it just wasn't realistic to take off 5 years from work. I had been saving for a very long time because I thought I would have kids. I thought I would, so I was saving for these things that never came. And so I had resources, but not enough to take off 5 years in Los Angeles. So I started looking at other places and I spent time in Guatemala studying Spanish. And I always wanted to live in another country and I always wanted to live in a Latin American country. And Guatemala wasn't a good fit for me with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, but I also spent quite a bit of time in Costa Rica. And so I started researching living in Costa Rica and moving there when my adoption was final. And so before the adoption was final, I went to Costa Rica. I did a lot of online research and then I looked at different developments and I found a development that I felt would be a good match for my family. And when my daughter's adoption was finalized, we moved to Costa Rica. So I moved to quit my job and moved to Costa Rica with my 1 and 3-year-old children. And we lived in the jungles in the south of Costa Rica first. We lived in 2 different locations. And I began that journey. And that area is very isolated. So there wasn't a lot to do. So we walked and, we have 2 dogs. We walked our dogs and we walked in the jungle and I played with the kids in the day. And then at night when the kids were asleep, that sense of dread came to me of like, who am I? What's going on with me? Why that sense of loneliness, that sense of feeling incomplete. And it was really scary, like I felt like I was so far out there on my own. And what I decided to do, the first development was not a good match. So we moved to another development that had more children, had people on a growth journey, people who were interested in personal development and had a school. When we moved here, I was like, okay, I'm going to do something proactive about this. And I started an art group with my neighbors. And I took my 26 years of social services experience and my love of creativity, and I brought them together and I created an art group in my yard every Tuesday morning at 8:30. And I just started making up exercises, just taking aspects of life and putting it out in a creative way. And one thing I want to say, and I want to be super clear about, I am a terrible artist. Like I cannot even draw a stick figure, not so bad. And it doesn't matter. It's the process. And so we started doing this every Tuesday and everybody started feeling better. And I started feeling better. I started to get to know myself better. And I was like, well, why is this working? I don't really understand it. So I started to do research, and there's huge amounts of research. The National Institutes of Health did a 10-year study on the impact of creativity and mental health. And basically, what happens with your brain is when you're in a creative where your body and your mind are activated at the exact same time, you're accessing different parts of your brain than if you're just using body or you're just using your brain. And so when you're in creativity, dance, music, playing music, writing, any of it, you're accessing a different part of your brain. And what we found was that things that we couldn't access through talking, we were able to access through meditation, visualization, and drawing.
So that is incredibly interesting, and definitely one of the things that has come up time and time again on the chat is the importance of creativity and the benefits of creativity. So totally hear you, totally resonate with that. The question I have for you that you know I'm so intrigued by your story is you said that you are not artistic. I am not either, and I also cannot do stick figures. So for me, my creative outlet tends to be music. It tends to be writing. It tends to be speaking, right? Like hence this podcast. What made you, knowing that you didn't feel like you were an artistic person, what made you want to lean towards art? How did you find yourself doing art?
There's two things. So I was a theater major at UCLA in my undergrad. And so creativity as part of me I always felt that I was a creative person. And, I did acting and directing and writing and all of that. So I always felt confident that I was creative. And then when I was in my 30s, I had a boyfriend and he said, why don't you do manual arts? You're a creative person. This is, and he did a lot of that. And I said, I'm terrible at that. Because when I was a kid, I was in the fine arts track in middle school the first year. And basically, they said I couldn't sing, I couldn't draw, I was really bad. And in the second year, they put me into the Gen Pop. They put me into wood shop and cooking and, the home ec, that track. And I was devastated. It completely crushed me as a middle school child. And so in my mind, you don't sing, you don't draw because you're bad. Right. And that went until I was in my 30s. And he said, look, that's not true. That's not who you are. I'm going to commission work from you. I'm going to pay you. And I want you to give me two pieces. And I was like, well, I can't, what am I supposed to draw? And he said, I want you to draw your feelings. And I said, oh, I could draw my feelings because I've been, like in my feelings like all the time. So I did that and I drew my feelings and he paid me $300 for these two pictures that I made. And that was the beginning of it for me personally. And then in my work, the second piece was when I was in community organizing, whenever we used art in relationship building in the groups that we were creating, everything flourished. People got to know each other better. They had empathy more for each other. They shared more. They understood each other, and the group grew much more quickly. So I was utilizing it personally, and I was utilizing it in my work, even though I wasn't good at it, because I saw the benefits of the process. So that's where that piece came from for me as a vehicle for change.
Sounds so interesting. So then how did you have all those things still with you in Costa Rica? Like, did you bring all your art supplies or did you just decide, you know what? I feel like I'm disconnected to that experience from a few years ago. That was really helpful. Let me just try it again. And then it like came to be this community event.
So the community asked for people to share their gifts and talents. And in the community organizing work that I did, that was the way that we approached everything. If there's a glass half full of water, is it half full or half empty? It's both, but which half can you do something with? You can
Yeah.
only do something with the full half, and that's your gifts and talents. And so this really resonated with me. So when they said, what can you do? It's like, what can I do? And that's when I thought, well, I love art and I have my social services background. I can contribute. And this is what I want to do for myself. And I think being seen, what I found in the process was that being seen is a key to change, internal change for yourself, being seen and being validated for who you really are, your authentic self. And that's what came in this group environment was that we were able to see each other, we were able to acknowledge our own truths, and that helped the healing process. If you like, the issue was something that happened with your mom and you could never tell your mom about that, but to go through the experience of drawing it and sharing your drawing, having other people see you, having other people validate your experience and witness the release of that thing, it was incredible. I mean, like the combination of journaling, meditation, visualization, and drawing for me was like magic in, first of all, finding and then releasing both experiences and messages that were not serving me and that were not connected to who I am authentically.
That is so amazing. And like for me personally, meditation, visualization, journaling, all those things are key parts of my life, my identity, what I do every day. But the one thing that I'm not doing is art because I too have internalized this belief that I'm not an artistic person. But maybe like you're inspiring me to maybe dabble a little bit there. Again, it's
Yeah,
just for you, right? Like you don't necessarily have to commission it at some big art gallery or make a livelihood
totally.
out of it. So
Yeah.
definitely something to consider. So another question I have for you, Kelly, is I know through your work you are a happiness coach. So I know that you've supported people in your own healing and your own self discovery. But I think through your work, if correct me if I'm wrong, you've also come up with some sort of archetypes or personalities as people or happiness blockers. Is that right? Can you tell me
Yes.
a little bit more about that?
Sure. So as I continued to work with more and more people, and I turned, it was, just something that I did out of my passion for several years, and then I turned it into a business, and I started my coaching business. And then as the volume of people that I was working with increased, I started to notice certain aspects were different within certain people, and there are sort of two underpinning things that are going on for people. And then it's sort of the way that they internalize it and the way that they move forward with it. It kind of separates them out. So the two things are negative experiences. So as we have things happen to us starting in childhood, we tend to sort of abandon parts of ourselves when we have a painful experience. We don't want that to happen again, and we kind of attach some aspect of life or some aspect of ourselves to that negative experience, and then we're like, okay, I'm staying away from that. And then the other piece, which for me was, that one was really clear in the work I was doing with my neighbors and with myself. But the other piece, have had a coach continuously for the last 8 years. And my first coach, and he did a lot of regression type work, and he was doing a regression. And just for context, my family is very democratic in terms of Democrat Republican. And my mother was very, very, very rabidly liberal. And when I was young, we would go, we protested everything, we leafleted, everything. And for my life until this coaching session, this was very important to me. And I was very, very, this was a hill that I would die on, right? And then in this coaching session, the coach was regressing me, go back, go back. And he's like, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm at a march." And he's like, "Well, who's there?" I was like, "My mom's there." And he's like, "What's going on?" And I said, "Everybody's yelling, screaming." And this incredible, and every time I talk about this, I have the same experience of it. Like, I have shivers right now. This sense of my mother and this connection of like, I love her. And everyone was so angry and it was so important. And I said it, everybody's yelling. And he said, "That's a lot to put on a baby." And I was like, "Oh my God, it's not me. I'm not a divisive person. I function through love. I function through support. I have been gone in my attachment to my mother for the last 45 years." And in that moment, I put it down and I have never picked it up again. Those things don't concern me. It's like literally like night and day. And it was such a significant experience for me in my coaching because we all have those things where we have adopted other people's core beliefs because of the way that we feel about them or because of the way that they made us feel. And then we think that it's part of our identity and we live our lives as though it's part of our identity. And so in the drawing and meditation visualization, a lot of what we identify are those messages that you believe are your core values and really don't belong to you at all. And so that for me was a really significant piece. So those two things, the negative experiences and then the negative messages and the way that they have disconnected you from your authentic self is the core of the work. And then within that, there's tend to be four kind of blockers. So the first one is emotional blocker. And those are people where the experiential piece, the negative experiences, they hit them harder and took more of who they are. And they tend to have a hopeless perspective. They tend to be stuck in almost every area of their life. And they tend to um, be seeking emotional validation from the outside. And yet it's sort of like a loop and a cycle of never getting it. And then the second one is a sensitivity blocker, which is people where the messages were like that idea of being influenced by other people's belief systems was stronger. So their core self is very disconnected. Like their beliefs are what the way that they live their life is not well connected to their own core values. They've given away so much of their belief system to others that there's no there for them. And they're just, trying to attach to everything. And none of it works because none of it is actually their authentic self. And then the third one is glass half empty. And that kind of goes back to my community organizing work. So people who they kind of got both the negative messages and the negative experiences equally. And their perspective is nothing can ever get better. They're not going to be able to change anything. And the glass is always half empty. And so helping them with both the messages and the experiences. And then the last one is selfless blocker and selfless in a where that has become their identity. They don't think about themselves. They pour all of their attention into their family, their work. They're not even on their list. Everything goes out the door. There's nothing for them. They don't deserve anything. Their entire self-worth comes from what they can do for others. And therefore there's no happiness because at the end of the day, if whatever you do for you is what you can feel, if you don't love yourself, if you don't care for yourself, it doesn't matter what you do for anyone else. It's never going to fill you up. Pouring on each one.
Right. Yeah. So how does one, I mean, these personas that you described, I see them in my own client composition. As you were talking about them, I was like able to put names to faces, Um, but how can one recognize where they fit in? Is there a way to determine that, or can you be a mix of different personalities? Or okay,
Yeah, I mean, I believe in flexibility in all things. I think that's a key element of life and personal growth and happiness. But for me, it's an important aspect of sort of evaluating a new client because I always want to hear their history from them. And in the telling of their story, they reveal which one of these they and kind of not only which things to go for more, the messages or the experiences, but which one, and what is it blocking in terms of their ability to be connected to their authentic self. And so for me, in my intake process, I create a roadmap for the work that we'll do, because it's all in their story, like and in what's currently where they're currently feeling stuck. It to me, it's very clear when people talk about where they are and where they've been, which aspects are keeping them stuck.
so I think ultimately, correct me if I'm wrong, irrespective of which personality or combination you find yourself in, these are quote unquote happiness blockers, right? They're inhibiting you from connecting to yourself, which I think is where happiness resides. And how can one cultivate that connection in your opinion? How can we work towards that?
Well, I mean, I think, with creativity, with connection to yourself, I think the idea maybe first acknowledging that you're not where you want to be, because I think sometimes it's like that. I had struggle with that, with um feeling like I should be happy because I had all of the things that I should need to be happy. And so really first and that not being where you want to be is not a bad thing. I think those, like, it's okay to be where you are, and it's okay to want more than what you have now. And really, when you feel that way, it's more of you. It's not more of something outside. You want more of you. And so I think that's number one. And then, as you've talked about, having some kind of meditation practice where you're connecting with yourself. And then what I would say to someone is, when you are upset, to me, is always honor your feelings. Don't try to do something over your feelings, because then you're just trapping them. But what research shows is that feelings are like supposed to be 90 seconds long. And I don't know if I've ever had a feeling it's only 90 seconds in my life. But so you allow that initial expression of your feeling. But mostly what we do is loop in our thoughts, regenerating the same feeling over and over again. So once you've expressed it, to take out, a piece of paper and on one side write about your feelings, and really just write out everything you're feeling. And then close your eyes and connect with yourself and try to imagine your feelings as colors, and try to imagine your feelings as images. And they don't have to be realistic. It could just be like blobs of color, but to really connect your feelings with colors and shapes, and then flip your paper over and draw those out. Draw out your feelings and imagine that your feelings are actually traveling down your arm and into the paper as you draw, and then destroy the paper. So rip that paper up and imagine that not only did those feelings leave through the pen and through the expression of the drawing, but now you're literally destroying them. And I like to throw them in the air because it makes me feel like a sense of release. But for some people, that's anxiety provoking because it's trash. You can crumple them up. But that's an exercise, is a super brief exercise that I do with new clients, and just keep giving them tools in their tool belt so that they can work on their feelings on a daily basis. But to me, the expression, and that sense of that it leaving, physically leaving your body, is something that people can do to help just start with managing their emotions.
This is all coming at a really great time. I know that I don't know if we can say we're out of this pandemic or whatnot, but our world has definitely changed. And I think one of the things, the silver linings that I take away from it is that many people had no choice but to connect with themselves during this time. As the world shut down outside, there was really nothing to do, and a lot of profound emotions, things that we might have hid or distracted ourselves through the busyness of our life. Like as things really slowed down, we had this opportunity to go within. And I think that's where a lot of people felt this discomfort that, oh, well, I've got everything. Why do I feel so empty inside? Like, why have I always thought that buying something or, traveling here, like those are all great experiences, and I'm not knocking any of that, but like, why do we always feel the need to do all these things? But at the end of the day, thinking that they're going to make us feel better or hoping that they're going to make us feel better. But at the end of the day, they don't. So your suggestions are a lot more cost effective as well. They're things that people can do anywhere. And it's just really about connecting with yourself. And it's finding that mechanism, whether it be meditation, whether it be a combination of things, is that I'm really excited to try art. I'm not artistic, so I'm excited to go in that direction and see where this experience leads me to further strengthening my relationship with myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and none of my clients are artists. It's not it's this is the process is not for artists. It's the way that the process connects you with yourself in a different way than other methods, and you should definitely try it.
I don't know about you, Kelly, but I really espouse that belief that I think life is all about learning to connect to ourselves. So through our lessons, what do we learn? How does that shape who we are at our core? do things align with our values? What are our values? And values sometimes shift too, right? We have our core values, but just always this journey of self exploration. You're never done figuring out who you are and aligning with that. So there's always room for more tools and more things to try to deepen that connection, to really honor yourself. So this has really been very beautiful. I do have another question, and that is, so like me, for example, not super creative. And you've mentioned that this process is not for those that consider themselves artists or super creative. But if you're new to this whole artistic expression or creative expression, do you have any recommendations for beginners or words of advice? Like, how do we start this practice? You mentioned the
Yeah.
visualization and drawing.
Yeah, I definitely would do visualization and drawing. There's a practice of sort of weekly journaling, but as opposed to journaling, drawing. So trying to kind of like, and it's usually you could do it daily too, but in the way that I work with clients, it's usually weekly, where you do kind of a combination of writing and drawing, and just trying to reflect not on what happened as much as what you experienced throughout your week, trying to attach images to your life experience and to start to bring things out in that way. So definitely expressing your feelings through drawing, and then reflection through drawing is another sort of early way to kind of connect with it. And it's definitely a process, it's that these are all tools, and it's a process of learning what works for you. And I think, for me, with my clients, when they have their first like significant breakthrough using these methods, it changes, because it's like first you're like, drawing, I don't know. And then when you unearth something and release something, or you figure out something about where you want to go through this process, it really like your commitment to delving into yourself through creativity really shifts, because you see the power of it. And that's happened, over and over and over again, that people just like, oh, okay, so this is serious, like what I can do with it. And so it's the process. You get to know it, and then it starts to benefit you, and you go further and further.
I have two more points that are coming to mind. So, number one, just reflecting again on your story, because it's so unique to move continents. It is to like,
Yeah.
adopt children, and like just to start all over again
Yeah.
and really set this tone or the stage for the kind of life environment the environment that you want for your healing and your growth, and also to raise kids. When it comes to your children, or children in general, like, as a parent myself, how can we so I have two kids. And they're both actually quite artistic, but one is extremely artistic. And I really don't know where she gets this talent. It is a really beautiful gift that she has, because no one else, I would say, in our house has this. And that is her outlet. She spends hours and hours doing art. How can I support her in finding herself or finding happiness through art? Do you have any suggestions for that?
Well, one thing that I did with my kids from very early on was helping them to express their feelings through art, even before they could talk. We would do things with paint and drawing, and having them uh, bring color, to their feelings, bring expression to their feelings. So I think that same tool, when my kids get upset now, they will go and get the art supplies,
Hmm.
and they'll start to, express their feelings. And now they're writing, but before they were writing, I would write out their feelings, and then they would draw out how they felt, and then they would rip them up, and they love that part. But I also think that, the combination of journaling and drawing for a child, that because you want to bring in the personal development aspect, and not just have it be, oh, I'm going to draw a dog, or, a flower, because that's pretty. But like, how can I express what's me? How can I express what's going on with me? How can I express what I want in my life right now, what I want in my life in my future? How can I express my relationships through my creativity, and bringing creativity into those relationships? Like, we do a lot of family art, where there's a thing called an intuitive painting, where you just take a blank canvas and each person adds to it and you don't get attached to what you
Hmm.
put on there because somebody might come and paint right over it. And and it's amazing because it ends up like 7, 8 layers and it ends up as a beautiful picture. But the process of feeling each other, where are people at? What are they contributing? What do you feel next? How do you, and we'll use like little animals and different types of rollers and like, and just, that'll be, we try to do at least one family art activity every week to really like bring that as a way that we express ourselves in our relationships as well.
So beautiful. All right. So the other final reflection, and I'm curious to see what you think about this. Life is a series of connect the dots. Like these pivotal things happen to us. They shape. In hindsight, we can maybe see how pivotal they were. We may not recognize it at the time, or we can just see how that led to the next step. And it wouldn't have happened if that next step didn't happen. There's no such thing as coincidences in my mind. So you having that profound relationship that like challenged you to use art as a creative tool and to get confidence in it through like, receiving money for it even, right? To me, I feel like that was really meant to be for you. Like maybe that was meant to unlock this gift that you have to give to other people, to discover this healing modality, both for yourself. That was a gift to yourself, but also you're using that now to create transformations in others. What do you think about that? Do you agree?
100%. Everything I think, and that's something with my clients because what happens a lot of times when people do connect with their authentic self is they need to make changes in their external world because their world is too small for them now. And it doesn't fit their authentic self. It fits the box they were trying to shove themselves into. And so I try to help people understand, let your passions, let your gifts, let the things that call you drive that next place that you go. And that's from my experience too. Absolutely. I feel like, everything happened exactly how it should have. And I try to talk about that too, that when things are painful, it doesn't mean it's not for your highest good. A
Yeah.
lot of times your growth is painful, but it's taking you to it's the next step that you need on your journey. And when you look back on it, you're like, oh, of course, that makes perfect sense. I could never, just like that boyfriend, he didn't want children. And so if I had stayed with him, I probably wouldn't be a mom. And I probably like none of this would have happened either. So it's like there's purpose in that relationship, but it wasn't the relationship. It was the things that I learned about me
Yeah.
in that relationship.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I feel the same way. We all know that saying that growth doesn't happen when you're in your comfort zone. And I really truly believe that, especially when we're looking at self growth and transformation and allowing ourselves to really explore who that is. Sometimes those things happen to us externally that we must react to, and they force us into growth. And that feels really uncomfortable, like loss of a loved one or whatnot, right? Just big life events happen. They don't feel good at the time, but they really do support who you ultimately become, obviously, right? It's all cyclical and I don't know, it's just a very beautiful thing when
Yes.
you separate yourself from that moment and from those feelings that you get in the moment and you take a look at where you were and where you are
Yes.
now and how you couldn't have possibly gotten to where you are now, without having that. And then also just thinking where that might lead you in the future, right?
Absolutely.
Nobody
Yeah. And
knows, right?
I think that's a way to accelerate it is to ask that question after you feel your feelings. What else is possible? Where's this? What's the meaning in this for me? Because then you're, instead of staying stuck in the negative event, you're trying to apply that toward something in the future. And I think it helps your brain to transition out of looping around in there and trying to apply it to something good.
Well, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed this chat. I can't wait to try art now. This is going to be another thing I'm going to add to my toolbox. Before we wrap up, is there one final piece of advice that you'd like to leave my listeners with when it comes to finding their happy?
I think give yourself grace and empathy. It is important to be where you are. You might not be where you want to be, but be where you are and acknowledge yourself for being there and for being courageous enough to see it and to say, I will, this is where I'm going. This is where I am. And this is where I'm going. and to really give yourself grace and the time and the empathy to allow yourself to grow and have just patience and grace and empathy for yourself.
That is so wonderful. And I think also, especially the people that are tuning in, they're really growth oriented, they're high achieving, they are also very ambitious. And oftentimes we need that reminder, right? We need that reminder. And you alluded to this earlier too. And I also agree with you on this is it's the journey. It's not the destination. We're never going to get to that destination, that proverbial highest level self. We're always developing and moving towards that highest level self. And when we think we've gotten there, there's always room for improvement. There's always room for growing some more, right? So it's really about enjoying those moments because it is those moments that form our life. So it's not waiting for these circumstances to fall into place to find our happiness. It's really about finding our happiness in the moments and connecting to ourselves to really make sure that we're aligned. So it really is happiness. It's not just something that looks externally like you're happy or externally you're selling those boxes, but you're feeling it inside as well.
Yeah, and I think happiness is not as big of a feeling as people think. Like, I think people think it's like, ah, I think it's more like a deep contentment within your own heart and mind and soul, and it just a daily sense that you're okay, that everything's good, and people are looking for this crazy high
Mhm.
as happiness. And in my experience, both myself and with my clients, that's not it. It's where your baseline rises and you're operating from here and you still go up and down, but you feel good in your bones, you know? To me, that's happiness, and that when we're targeting that, it also takes some of the pressure off instead of targeting this, like, unsustainable imaginary h.
Yeah. I think that's maybe a little bit of mainstream culture, right? The movies and everything. Like it's all go big or go home and instant
Yeah.
gratification. It's not recognizing that it's actually coming from within you. Nobody can make you happy. You can only make yourself happy. And it's about the alignment. It all comes down to the alignment. Thank you so much, Kelly. I will actually leave your social media information, everything like that in the episode description. So if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about Kelly or get in touch with her, feel free to do so. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in, and I will see you next week. Bye for now.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Anita Chat podcast. If you haven't taken a minute to leave a review, I would absolutely love to hear from you. All you need to do is to search for the show, click your star rating, and type in a few words. Also, if there's a specific topic you'd like to see covered in this podcast, if you'd like me to be your coach, or if you want to just chat, feel free to send me an email or shoot me a message through my IG, which you'll find in the show notes. The show notes will also contain any links to the freebies that were referenced in this episode. Until next time, friends, it's been great chatting with you.